The video games, the movies, the internet stuff is so violent.
After a brief decline in popularity, video games have now emerged as one of the most popular media for children and adolescents. Online games are now an estimate of 80% of households. For example, GTA 5 sold 11.21 million copies within the first 24 hours of sales, making it the highest gross-selling violence-based video game of all time.
Shooters is the most commercially profitable of all the video games out there, with 27% of all video games consisting of first-person shooters. While over 30 studies, researchers cannot agree if the violent content video games have an effect on aggression levels. The literature on video games is littered with mixed findings, with study using a wide range of games, treatment exposure times, and subject pools, obscuring clear conclusions.
A meta-analysis made up of 25 studies using both behavioural outcome measures and pen and pencil to measure hostile feelings, which tested candidates' aggression levels following a period of time playing various different types of video games. The analysis found a few different interesting points. One of them being that violent video games containing fantasy and human characters were rated as having raised effects on people's emotional arousal responses, and also decreased activity in the brain's executive function, which is associated with control, focus, and concentration. A point that will be touched on later as a matter of interest was that the subject pools were made up entirely of university students. In terms of time played, it was found that the initial arousal effect was at its peak between 0 and 5 minutes, and after that, it dramatically fell off after an extended period of gaming, which was considered to be 75 minutes long. At that time, arousal was replaced by fatigue or boredom. Results taken from pen and pencil studies found people to write more aggressive content than the results from the behavioural studies. But this was to be expected, as people might have aggressive thoughts, but they do not act on due to cultural constraints. In conclusion, researchers found slight effects of video gameplay on aggression, and the effect is smaller than that of violent television. There is a trend suggesting that longer playing time results in less aggression. The general aggression model is one of the most comprehensive and widely used theories for understanding aggression. The model considers the role of social and cognitive, development, and biological factors on aggression. As you can see from the diagram, it is made up of three proximate processes: inputs, route, and outputs. Inputs is divided into two variables: person and situation. The person factors could be, for example, narcissism, certain personality disorders, or low self-control. Situational factors include social stress, provocation, frustration, violent media, or many others. Both these factors work together to influence cognition, affect, or arousal, which you can see as part of the next stage. These three variable types make up a person's present internal state, which then goes on to influence appraisal and decision processes and on aggressive or non-aggressive outcomes. Appraisal often appears to be second nature response, something done unconsciously. From this, the person decided how to respond. Once an action has been carried out, that action influenced the social encounter, which can alter person and situation factors, therefore restarting the cycle. Basically, the model also shows how repeated life experience of a variety of kinds can lead to development of aggressive personality. This model was used in the test describing why video games do lead to increased aggression. This study was used to test whether a brief exposure to media violence in the form of video games can temporarily create hostile expectation biases. To test that prediction, they used randomly assigned college student participants to play one of 4 violent or non-violent video games for 20 minutes. Afterwards, they were given an ambiguous story about potential interpersonal conflicts. They were asked what the main character will do, say, think, and feel as the story continues. Participants consisted of 224 undergraduate students, evenly distributed between male and female. As expected, people who played violent video games tended to have more aggressive responses from the main characters in the stories than did people who played the non-violent video games. People who played a violent video game were more likely to expect the main characters to say or do something more aggressive. For example, one person who played a violent video game expected the main character to shoot or stab the other driver. In conclusion, the research found that violent content in video games can temporarily create a hostile expectation bias. During our research, it became evident that many studies based their findings off a similar subject pool. Students were primarily used in the testing of the hypothesis for researchers. This was flagged as a point of interest by the team and was further investigated. Cognitive researcher Daphne Bavelier revealed that the average age of a gamer is 33 years old. Although one study did state the student pool age was between 18 to 44, the standard deviation was 21.38, making it abundantly clear of the narrow age profile. We would critic testing on this matter and would suggest that any further research should provide not only a larger subject pool, as tests average around 100 participants, but also to include a far wider age profile, including older and younger age demographics.
In the beginning, the team believed that we would find a strong correlation between online video games and increased aggression levels. However, research has enlightened us to the reality that many components need to be tested in order to come to a conclusive segment that we are not currently accounted for in the research. As a team, we felt there was a clear lack of comparative studies, which made it overly hard to critically analyse the two sides based on the information laid out in front of us. Not only were some of the studies based on mean and gain comparison. One example tested Little Big Planet against Call of Duty, a first-person shooter, when they are completely different games, with one game being based on a puzzle platform game, meanwhile the other is a first-person shooter. This comparison is similar to comparing a Disney movie to a crime series. Although both are video games, it can be nearly assumed that fast-paced shooters, violent video games, will cause higher levels of aggressions when all other factors are assumed for. Some of the methods used to analyse research results were also deemed random and suboptimal by the group, and we'd recommend for any further research to give clear indication of why researchers used a specific method and why they thought it would benefit the study. For example, the hot sauce message was a way of testing aggression which was formulated in 1999. Considering the modern standards of technology and in neurobiology, we believe that there will not be a lot more reliable and accurate measure of testing these theories nowadays. Offline gaming. There's one clear study stating that offline gaming is considered to raise aggression levels more than online gaming. In terms of our opinion whether video games are effective at aggression levels, we cannot conclusively say whether or not they do. But one thing we do believe is that violent video games result in a heightened sense of emotional arousal and may even perhaps cause aggression during gameplay. However, again, this is a lot not to do with the game, but the person and their current cognitive state.
Violence-based video game!